curious who you've seen step up this week in the wake of the loss to kind of, vocally say, hey, let's get out of the slump. Let's make sure it doesn't carry over this week.
Yeah, I don't know if I would describe it the way you just did, but yeah, the guys have been great. The coaches have been great. We're on to the next game and the next opponent. But it's one game. I don't know if I would describe it the way you just did.
The approach at left guard last Saturday was all Venga. Was that about what JB was coming off of, or what was that about Venga establishing himself for 6 weeks?
Yeah, obviously with JB coming off an injury, didn't get a ton of reps during the week. He was available to play, but we kind of took it as more of like an emergency. If somebody had gotten hurt, then he would have went in the game. But based on reps between him and the coaches, we just felt like the amount of time that JB put during the week was the better option. But he's fully available for this week.
Through 7 games, you guys currently lead the Big Ten in yards per carry allowed. It also looks like teams aren't rushing as much on you. Why do you think that is, and how much of that is a testament to what Deion's done?
Yards per carry allowed
in terms of least yards per carry allowed.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think Deion's done a good job. I think it's a combination of a couple things, right? It's how well we're playing on defense. I also think there's been a number of games where I think we've talked about earlier in the week about the stats can be skewed sometimes, because if you get up by a significant lead, people feel like they have to throw it to get back in the game. So I think it's a combination of how some of the games have played out, but also how well we're playing on defense, and specifically the defensive line.
James, how have you seen Drew respond over the last few days, given Saturday was his first loss as a starter?
Yeah, good. I mean, he puts a ton into this. As you guys mentioned, he was pretty upset after the game, which a lot of people were, but has moved on. I think for a lot of us, when that next opponent comes out and that next game plan comes, and the film and the next challenge and the next opportunity, that helps, because it allows you to pour all your energy into that next battle, that next challenge.
James, is there anything you're able to update us on regarding Chop and Amin? And beyond that, where are you guys depth-wise at that position? It looked like you were able to play a lot of players in the first, half of the season. How much is that going to help you regardless of what happens there?
Yeah, Amin, it's too early to tell. I think Amin could be a little bit like JB. It'll be a game-time decision. And then even then, depending on how much work he got during the week, will still be a decision that needs to be decision that needs to be made. I think a little bit too is how veteran of a player is it in terms of how much practice time they miss and how much football they've played here. That plays a part into it as well. But we have played a ton of guys at defensive end. There's also a young guy that we've been excited about who's coming on is Jameel Lyons. So that plays a part in it as well. And with Chop, we hope to get him back sooner rather than later, but I don't have any of that information right now.
James, the feedback on.
Did you?
I apologize.
Did you have something else?
Go ahead.
No, that wasn't me.
That was me. Go ahead, Colin.
Like you threw your voice.
The feedback on Jameel has been pretty positive from the staff, from teammates, going back to August. To see a guy that, if the depth chart wasn't as built up as it was at defensive end, you may have felt comfortable playing him a little bit earlier this season, more extensively.
Yeah, I think I made a comment like that. There's some positions and some guys that I think would have played. I think that's a good example with Jameel. I think there's also part of it too with new players, whether they're high school or transfer players. Are you playing them in certain packages, or are they ready to handle all of it? And I think with Jameel early on, it was like we're going to use him in certain packages, but not all of it. But as the season goes on, you hope that you're at a point at this stage that he can handle more. So obviously this week has been great work for him today and yesterday. We still got Thursday, we still got Friday, but hopefully he'll have an opportunity to play on Saturday and take advantage of it. I think you guys have seen he's made some flashes in the games he has played in, and then same thing in practice. So there's excitement about him.
Coach, building on the question about Drew, it was emotional for a lot of the players after the game on Saturday. This is not your first rodeo with emotional loss, though. How do you feel the players have responded this week from a mental standpoint?
Yeah, I think good. I mean, to be honest with you, we we've had discussions about moving the press conference to Monday for a little bit of that reason, so we can move on and not keep doing this, not keep going back and talking about it. I get that you guys ask the questions, but for us, one of the ways to move on is to stop talking about it. And the hard part is you guys want to talk about it, which I get it. I totally get it. But it's kind of sending mixed messages, right? The best way to move on is to focus on the next opponent, learn from it, which we did on Saturday night, which we did on all day Sunday. But then it's time to move on to the next opponent. Learn the lessons from the game, make the corrections, and then pour all of our energy into finding a way to get a win against Indiana and playing well, so we can build that confidence and take it, for the rest of the season.
When you talk about moving forward, I wondered what you've learned over the course of your career about what you think you know about your team and its ability to surprise you at unexpected moments, and how you sort of reconcile those two things as you try and lead a team through moments like that.
Yeah, I think it's hard because although you learn lessons throughout the process and throughout your career, each team kind of is their own team. As was one of the things we talked about last week is, that was this team's first time playing those guys. This team, the actual team, this locker room, the coaching staff, and really those things that had happened before, positive or negative, they don't really impact these guys in this locker room. So, for us, although we've learned lessons, a lot of these guys, it was their first time. It was their first time going through it, or the first time at the shoe, or whatever it may be. But I do think you see some guys step up in those moments, those games on the road against challenging opponents, or it's from a leadership standpoint in the locker room at halftime, or during the game, or after the game. I think one of the other things that can be challenging in an emotional locker room at times is I think you can make the mistake that you expect everybody to, I don't know if grieve is the right word, but for everybody to grieve the same way you grieve, and people handle those things differently. You have to be careful with that. But again, overall, I've been pleased with how the guys have handled it and moved on. But we got to go take our frustrations out on this next opponent.
Hey, James. Yesterday you said something that I don't think we've ever heard you say before. You said, I think in the last question, you said you were thinking ahead of time what you were going to say after the game. Is that an anomaly, or do you always do that? Because, you remember what you said yesterday.
Yeah, no, I think what I was trying to talk about is the confidence that we had going into that game, and I knew the questions that were going to come based on the record. So there was some things that I wanted to say, and it was going to be an opportunity. And that was part of my process of kind of visualizing the success that we were going to have, and then how we were going to handle it. So yeah, I think that's a fair interpretation of what you're saying. But for me, it was the confidence that we had, and it was for me specifically, not just the program, of visualizing, walking into that media session after the game, and maybe not answer as many tough questions as I had in the past.
James, Riley Thompson is a guy that comes from that Australian lineage of punters. What has he meant to the special teams unit, and how has he progressed over the course of this year?
Yeah, he's done a nice job, and I think for a lot of these guys, whether they're transfers or freshmen, we're kind of getting at that point of the season where they've kind of adjusted. They know what to expect. I think they're pretty comfortable, and I think right now, he's doing some really nice things. And I've seen our special teams as a group, really improve over the last couple of weeks. And I think typically special teams are highly driven by the specialists. If you're snapper, punter, kicker, holder, those guys are high-level guys, then you got a chance to be successful, especially with the depth that we have at other positions. So I think as those guys have gotten more comfortable in their roles and have been more consistent, our special teams have improved. So he's one of those guys that I think is really comfortable now in how we do things and how we operate, and doing some nice things.
James, how have you seen Mike Yursich kind of handle this week? Because obviously you guys have been together for a while. But obviously, there's been a lot of questions, a lot of things from the fans about Mike this week. How have you seen him kind of handle that?
Well, I think, number one, it's challenging. It's challenging on all of us. And, one of the things that we try to do, the way we operate, is try to eliminate as many distractions as we possibly can. So it's not always fun for me to come to the press conference, but it allows the rest of the staff to focus on the job at hand and moving on. Now, are we completely in a submarine? No. But, I think on Sunday, just like a lot of people, we were in there and there was tough film sessions, tough conversations, a lot of transparency, a lot of honesty, really good discussion from the entire staff. And that is hard to hear sometimes, but is also needed. So it was a challenging night, and it was a challenging next day. And again, like I've mentioned before, you kind of move on. But I do think it's helpful that you're able to move on. Like, that's one of the things about being a head coach. You gotta, like that, leaving the submarine and walking over to the press conference, that I know the questions that are coming. Not the funnest part of my week, but that's the job. And the way we have it set up, it allows the assistants and coordinators to focus on the job at hand and move on without some of those responsibilities.
James, with the knowledge that you're looking for efficiency this year for your passing game, how far do you think you are off from where you want to be, if at all?
Yeah, we're behind. In the passing game. I think we've shown some flashes. I think Trey's injury, when we didn't have a whole lot of proven guys before that. I think some guys that have kind of come in have transitioned a little bit slower than we had hoped. But this is an opportunity to take a step this week and build confidence moving forward. I think there's guys in that room that have the ability to do the job at a high level, but it's about consistency physically, but it's also consistently mentally. Sometimes you guys ask questions, and it's hard because as the head coach, I know you guys are just asking the questions that you have to ask, but if I don't answer them correctly, they can be divisive. They can be divisive for the coaches and the players. They can be divisive. A lot of times, as we all learned, people only hear my answer. They don't hear the question. I don't want to ever say anything that's divisive between the offense and the defense, or a position group feeling like they're being called out. We do those things behind closed doors, but but the reality is, there's room for growth there, and there's sometimes where things happen where you guys don't know about, where a guy runs the wrong route or the wrong assignment. I'm not going to come out and say those things, or on the offensive line or defensive line, but those things happen, and those things may limit, playing time or opportunities. But I'm not going to come in the press conference and necessarily say that when it doesn't necessarily make sense to you guys. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's the challenge as the head coaches in the press conferences. How do I answer your questions so you guys feel like I'm giving you what you need to do your jobs, but not do anything that's going to cause issues in my locker room? And that's literally the balance constantly. How can I answer your questions? But most of your questions put me in that position. So that's the challenge.